Welcome everyone to TEDxCebuInternationalSchool, the very first independently organized TED event at CIS. I'm Sully, one of your MCs and the head organizer for this event.
And I'm Katrina, head of the content committee and your other MC.
First, I would like to thank everyone who worked hard behind the scenes to make this event a reality, and most especially to my core team comprised of Katrina G, Anya C, Renault K, and our supervisor, Mr. Jonathan Denton. We all poured our time and energy into this, starting all the way from the summer of last year. So we hope you enjoy what we have prepared for you this evening.
Before we begin, let us watch this short official TEDx introduction video.
Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons. People gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
The last 2 years enduring the pandemic have brought upon many new challenges and hurdles. Not only that, the start of this year began with the remnants of Super Typhoon Odette, and most recently, the destruction of Typhoon Agaton.
Many feel hopeless, lost, and uninspired. After all, it isn't hard to feel as though the odds are against us when tragedy surrounds us.
Hence the importance of rediscovering our passions, reconnecting with our desires, and finding the inspiration to reignite a journey, even if it's only one step at a time. This is the very theme of tonight's series of talks: rediscover, reconnect, and reignite.
Today, we will hear from 8 speakers of all ages and walks of life, and all with their unique stories and ideas worth sharing. A few are joining us here live today, so you'll be able to ask questions in the Q&A portion.
In between, there will be performances from students around Cebu, sharing their talents with us to enjoy. These performances range from original songs to martial arts demonstrations. To kick off the event, let us have the artist Scheme the Kid present his original rap, You Ain't the First.
Making that money, they know how we roll. You know I'm keeping it sticking on pole. Asses are broken, I'm paying the toll. Cruising the city, that's how it go. Pull up to spot, we throwing a show. Hustle we do, we keep it on low. Cause that's how it go. Copy some kits from Kiss Cartel. I'm like a ship, I just sail. Give me some work, I won't bail. Keep it down low, I won't tell. World really sucks, we living in hell. I'ma blow up like bombshell. Police really suck, they germ cell. Y'all can't land, y'all must bail. You say you hate me, but you ain't the first. Looking so jealous, your gym might be cursed. Checking my drip to quench your thirst. I be unique, I be the first. I'm with my slimy, you know those my bros. Ballin' so hard, call me D-Rose. Saw me in person, man, it just froze. Spitting this fire, man, it just flows. Working so hard, I'm reaching my goals. I'm running it up, I let it flow. We throwing it up, we throw a show. Always head up, never goes low. Yeah, I plead the fifth, no one ever snitch. I'ma hit you up, leave you in the ditch. Always keep it real, no one never switch. You say you hate me, but you ain't the first. Looking so jealous, your gym might be cursed. Checking my drip to quench your thirst. I'll be unique, I'll be the first. I'm with my slimy, you know those my bros. Ballin' so hard, call me D-Rose. Saw me in person, man, it just froze. Spitting this fire, man, it just flows. Working so hard, I'm reaching my goals. I'm running it up, I let it flow. We throwing it up, we throw a show. Always head up, never goes low. I'ma hit you up, knock off your throat. Head in zero, climb a plateau. Wet up your home, stomp on your tongue. You say you hate me, but you ain't the first. Looking so jealous, your gym might be cursed. Checking my drip to quench your thirst. I be unique, I be the first. I'm with my slimy, you know those my bros. Ballin' so hard, call me D-Rose. Saw me in person, man, it just froze. Spitting this fire, man, it just flows. Working so hard, I'm reaching my goals. I'm running it up, I let it flow. We throwing it up, we throw a show. Always head up, never goes low.
Wow, we hope that performance has got you hyped up for what's to come. Let us not wait any longer to begin the talks, starting off with Butch Karangai. A graduate of the Wharton School of Business, Butch worked in advertising and management consulting in New York. He's been an active proponent of the creative movement since 2008, when Cebu was designated as a creative city by the British Council. Butch also led Cebu's successful bid to be designated as a UNESCO City of Design and was a national consultant for the United Nations Department of Social and Economic Affairs.
He's currently the nexus of the Creative Cebu Grid, serves on the Cebu City Tourism Commission, and helped establish the Philippine Creative Cities Network. He will be talking about how to use Ikigai and creativity to help you achieve personal and social balance to help you pivot post-pandemic.
Good day, CIS family and friends. Thank you for the invitation to speak today. My name is Butch, and I'm here to talk to you about something that is very close to me, and that is holistic wellness in a chaotic world. I'm sure that we all will agree that the last 2 years have been particularly challenging. COVID-19 brought much uncertainty, anxiety, and fear, which are death only magnified. And as the world was slowly just starting to recover, now we have a developing existential threat in Europe that has global implications. It is therefore understandable why so many feel overwhelmed and helpless. I myself have gone through numerous emotional roller coasters the last 24 months. So it is in times like these, when it is so easy to feel lost, when we tend to question who we are, and what the meaning of life really is. And then what? Do you keep on trudging on as if nothing ever happened? Or do you just succumb to your erratic emotions? What if I told you that there is a way to better assess where we are, who we really are, and where do we want to go? In 2019, I was working in an app called LifeLoop, which was a fully customizable AI-enabled tracker, barometer, and optimizer that was meant to enable users to lead a more balanced and meaningful life. The pandemic obviously put a pause to this project, but I'm basing today's talk on a lot of the work that was done then, but enhanced with the many learnings since. So let's begin. Today, I have enlisted the help of the legendary doggy diva, Miss Shishi Wawa. She looks happy and content, right? Chilling in the spa while sipping on her mocktail. Why, you may ask, is Miss Shishi looking so glum? That's because she's mastered the Wheel of Wellness, which is a tool for self-exploration that can help you survey choices or situations that impact your overall wellness. It has 8 dimensions, each of which are interconnected and equally important. Today, I will give you a brief overview on each of these aspects, while Miss Shishi over here will be sharing her tips as she gets her hair done while reading her fave mag, Diva Dog. Emotional wellness involves developing an awareness of your feelings and getting to know yourself better, and knowing when to seek and accept help. It's about showing your emotions, your thoughts and feelings, and being grateful for what you have. Emotional wellness also involves accepting and learning from mistakes and finding joy in overcoming challenges, no matter how small. Ultimately, it's about being kind to yourself and taking care of your body, mind, and soul. So Ms. Shishi says, do things that make you happy, smile and laugh a lot, spend time with friends and family who make you feel good about yourself, but also find some alone time to slow down and reflect. Physical wellness, which is next, involves daily physical activity so that you're able to live and keep on enhancing its quality without feeling tired or getting stressed. This involves getting off that couch and exercising for at least half an hour each day. It means having a higher quality diet, getting plenty of rest, whether it's between workouts or at night. Ms. Shishi also suggests that you get a fitness tracker, walk around while watching Netflix and junking all that junk and fatty food. Next up is intellectual wellness, which revolves around instilling passion for lifelong learning and curiosity from a very early age by engaging in activities that bolster your creativity while stimulating your mind. This involves deriving pleasure from learning something new every day, whether it be about science, history, or the planet. It's also about discovering new places, new processes, and even new synonyms. Our doggy diva thinks that you should get on YouTube and start some DIY projects, junking that violent MMO game and doing Wordle instead. Most of all, she wants you to be open-minded and not be scared to think and act out of the box. The social dimensions of wellness involves meaningful and supportive relationships with family, friends, and communities that are meant to enhance your ability to collaborate productively with others. It's also about being a genuinely nice person who values others as much as oneself. Being social also means active participation in endeavors and, when comfortable enough, taking leadership roles in them. Ms. Shishi was always taught to practice good manners and thinks one should always be very generous with compliments. One should never dominate any conversation or to allow and encourage others to share. Above all, she thinks that students should really involve themselves in groups, whether it's in a team sport, a student org, or a study group. The environmental component of wellness revolves around a respect for nature by engaging in lifestyles that protect and nurture ourselves and our planet, including all the other species that inhabit it. It really means minimizing our impact and waste through conscious consumption and maximizing the use of what we already have. It also involves immersing yourself in nature as much as you can. Not only does this have proven health benefits, it also allows you to increase your appreciation of the planet even more. Ms. Shishi thinks that everyone should live by the 3R mantra, that is, reduce, reuse, recycle. She also says to stay away from fast food and fast clothing, as those businesses hugely impact our environment. Lastly, she feels that we need to actively campaign for planet Earth before it's too late. Next is spiritual wellness, which is a higher form of emotional wellness because it involves not just oneself, but everything around us. By being more aware, thankful, and thoughtful, we're able better to understand our meaning in life. That can help define our purpose. Spirituality means being more at peace with oneself, others, and the universe. It means connecting with individuals from different backgrounds, religions, cultures, and faiths. Above all, spirituality is about authenticity, acceptance, and request. Our doggy diva is also a practicing yogi who meditates on a daily basis. She only surrounds herself with positivity and has a profound respect for all religions and for the good that they teach. The last two facets of wellness may not have as much relevance to today's audience, but I thought it important to discuss them anyways. The first is occupational wellness, which means finding the right career that you enjoy and can help define you in the future. I think now would be the perfect time to reflect on what you've learned during the lockdown. Have you grown to love new skills that you may consider pursuing a career in? Have you learned new things that are making you reconsider your childhood ambition? As with everything else, it is important to keep an open mind as you still have the luxury to experiment and chart out your paths forward. Miss Chi just wants you to know that one can only eat so much applause though, and you cannot pursue a career that won't be able to sustain you and your lifestyle in the long term. Lastly, we get to financial wellness, which is being able to manage your income and expenses so money does not become detrimental to your health and studies. In other words, this involves reducing expenses and increasing both income and savings. This means doing more things for yourself, being prudent with your spending, tracking your cash flows, and anticipating future funding requirements. Managing all these numbers does get very daunting, so it's best to leverage tech, either through Google Sheets and or the many apps out there. The more entrepreneurial types should also consider starting a home-based micro-enterprise to supplement your allowance. The only thing Ms. Shishi would like to add here is for those of you intending to study abroad, do explore scholarships and financial aid to alleviate the exorbitant cost of higher education to your parents. I hope that you found that intro to the 8 dimensions of wellness interesting and urge you to do more research on them for more clarification. This does not, however, end today's discussion because both Ms. Shishi and I feel the need to briefly introduce you to another framework. Meet Ikigai, the 1,000-year-old Japanese concept of life-work balance that helps you achieve a more meaningful and satisfying life. Ikigai has 4 components, and at its most basic, prescribes that one should strive to do things that either one loves, one is good at, things that are good for others or the planet, and lastly, things that one gets paid for. Similar to a Venn diagram, these 4 components intersect, at which points we arrive at one's passion, mission, vocation, and profession. The last 2 of which, again, are not as relevant to today's audience. However, we will pick up on this again later. The reason we introduced Ikigai is that this framework quantifies what a particular activity means to all of us. So when we utilize both the wellness wheel and Ikigai at the same time, then we have a much more robust and compelling tool to help us better assess ourselves, where we are, and eventually where we want to go, which is the point. This next section is an exercise where you can see the wellness wheel and Ikigai in action. I have taken the liberty of setting up a Google Sheet for an imaginary CIS student. Don't worry, the link to the sheet along with this entire deck will be made available by the organizers later on. On the vertical, you have the 4 aspects of Ikigai, along with their intersections. for a total of 8 rows. On the horizontal, you have the 8 dimensions of wellness. Basically, what I would suggest is first list down the activities you do on a typical day, then identify which of the 8 dimensions of wellness they belong to. As mentioned before, these dimensions have overlaps, so a particular activity can be in multiple dimensions. So our theoretical CIS student is clearly a nature lover who likes to immerse herself in the outdoors, enjoys DIY upcycling projects, grows her own herbs, and eats a well-balanced plant-based diet. She is at the top of her class and has an insatiable curiosity for learning on a variety of subjects. She's also the student council president who loves connecting with others. Pretty active, she enjoys a wide range of sports while also having the talent for song and dance. The super student is also a budding entrepreneur and is utilizing her talent for baking to sell cookies to friends and family and saving that revenue for her college fund. She's curious about other cultures and religions, gets involved in community outreach projects, and walks the neighbor's dogs. Some of you may be hating on this super student right now. However, I promise she is purely fictional. All kidding aside, you will notice the wide lavender highlight in the middle of the horizontal and at the rightmost of the vertical. These are highlighted to reflect the fact that at your age, these fields are not expected to be filled in. However, if you're like our imaginary super student, then you will have some fields in there already. This type of exercise is normally not done by young people your age. However, I would even argue that most adults will be daunted by this. However, if you're interested in this approach, I urge you to start filling up the sheet. Don't worry if you don't have too many fields in at first. That is to be expected. Don't forget that an activity can be replicated in more than one field, so just place them where you think they belong. Once you're done, then I would urge you to really analyze the results and decide for yourself which aspects of wellness and ikigai you want to improve on and supplement. Once that's done, then come up with a plan as to how you want to proceed. Before I end with my last slide, let me just summarize today's talk in 4 points. First, metrics are key because they assess where we are and help us determine where we want to go. Second, Rome was not built in a day, so do not feel pressured. If you're interested, go at your own pace, but at the end of the exercise, it is essential to plan. Third, the paths forward are almost infinite and are full of challenges and missteps, but that is life. The important thing is you're able to pick yourself up, get back on track, and course correct. Lastly, if you do utilize these frameworks in your journey forward, it is important that you enjoy it. Let me end with something I grew up with because my mom hung a plaque with this prayer next to my bathroom mirror. And even though I'm more spiritual than religious, this quote from the Serenity Prayer by German-American theologian Reinhold Niebuhr has been imprinted in my mind all these years, and even has more resonance today than it did then. And with that, Ms. Shishi and I would like to wish you all the best on your journeys ahead. Thank you very much for your time. Cheers.
It's really unique how we combine the concepts of holistic wellness and ikigai. Thank you so much, Mr. Butch Karongai. Students will definitely remember your talk as we navigate the challenges of growing up and finding our ikigai. Our next talk will be presented by Nicole Ong-Oh, the founder and CEO of the Hub Cebu, a personalized phone case business.
Both her and her business have made it possible for her to support various NGOs. This includes supporting our local fishermen, sponsoring children and going to school, helping an animal shelter, and donating air purifiers to public utility jeepney drivers. Skilled in public speaking, leadership, and management, she will be giving a talk juggling her sanity and business during the pandemic.
So, we've been going through this whole global pandemic for almost 2 years now. And if you're someone like me who was stuck at the very beginning, or if you're still someone who's finding a routine for you, then this is perfect for you because I am going to be talking about how I found my routine during the pandemic and how I was able to balance my work life, my school life, my social life, and my sanity at the same time. So I'll give you guys 3 tips on how I was able to do that. So first of all, I want to say that I am an extrovert. So if you guys are somebody like me, then you mostly get your energy from being able to hang out with friends and family, or being able to socialize with other people, or being able to go to gatherings, parties, and such. And during the pandemic, that was obviously impossible to do, so it was very hard for me to find my inspiration or to find energy to do anything, because I was just stuck in my room doing nothing, or like stuck in my room forced to study, forced to work, and all that stuff. And at the time, at the start of the pandemic, it was super hard for me to understand how come things were like this and how I could ever be used to something like this. And at the time, I thought the pandemic would last maybe two weeks up to like a month, but it's already almost 2 years and we're still here. So I decided to find my way through the pandemic and beat this whole stigma of being stuck. So the first thing that really helped me during the pandemic is being able to manage my own time. So I found out how to do time management. I just watched a bunch of videos or like read a bunch of books. And yeah, through that, I was able to balance my time. I was able to find time for my hobbies and things I love to do on my free time. I was also able to balance my school life. I was able to pass my exams on time, pass homeworks on time. I was able to balance my work life, so I got to still even meet my numbers or goals for financial things. I got to meet that for my work. And at the same time, I also got to manage my social life. And you guys might think, how were you able to do that? And the simple answer is really time management. Because of time management, I was able to do all of these things because I knew how to set my boundaries to certain things. So let's say in the morning, I would do all my schoolwork. And then after lunch, I would do all my work. And after that, I would spend time with my family and friends, my dogs, my pets. And at the end of the day, which is after dinner, I would find time to do things that I like. So like my hobbies, such as reading or watching shows and movies. And it's very hard, and you need a lot of discipline when you want to do time management, because things won't be easy at the start. Obviously, lines get blurred because of being stuck at home. Everything is done in your bedroom. You work in your bedroom, you rest in your bedroom, you study in your bedroom, you do everything here. So the lines are kind of blurry on the times and what you should be doing at this time. But because of time management, it has really helped me set my boundaries because of discipline, and it has really helped me get myself through the days. Hand in hand with time management, you shouldn't be procrastinating every single minute of your life. You shouldn't always be saying, oh, I'll do this later, I'll do that later, I'll do this later. You should just get to it. Like if you have a homework due tomorrow and it was given today, just do it as soon as you get it, because the moment that's done and that's out, you're free to do the next big thing you want to do. So when I would get homeworks, let's say I had a class at 2 p.m. and the professor gave me a homework after class, so at 3 p.m. I would work on the homework. I'd work on it for about an hour, and then after that I'm done with school, and I move on to the next thing, which was my work, or I move on to the next thing, which was taking a break. Which is the second thing I recommend to you guys, is find time for yourself and learn how to listen to yourself. Learn how to give yourself rest and respect. This is because it's super important, because if you're not at your 100%, then how else would your work be at 100%? The way you are acting, the way your body is acting, the way your mind is acting is gonna be reflected on the work or the outcome that you produce. So at the start of the pandemic, I had this stigma where like, if I'm not hustling 24/7, then I'm not hustling at all, which was super duper wrong, because it really made myself super tired. I drained my energy so much, I drained my creativity, and to the point where I felt like I didn't even like what I was doing. This whole business that I placed up, which was built from passion, was now something that I saw that I had to do. It's not something that I wanted to do anymore, it was something I had to do. I had to do this because I'm still running a business. It's not I want to do this because I'm still passionate about it. And that's the result that I saw from myself. Every time I would drain myself, I would work every single day, Monday to Sunday, no breaks in between, just work, 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 school, school, school. And that was super tiring for me and for my brain. And it was not good for my mental health at all. And I was like, something had to be done because this isn't the way I want to operate. This isn't the way I want to reflect in my business. And it was clearly seen in my business that I was only doing that because I had to. And I felt a disconnection from myself. I felt a disconnection from my passion and the things that I actually love, because I would tire myself so much. And then I realized I had to give myself breaks. Even though I wanted to work because I felt a need to work, I would tell myself and signal to myself that no, it's time for a break, it's time to rest. And after I kept doing this, and after I kept training my brain that I had to take breaks, I saw an improvement in the way my work was. I saw an improvement in the outcome of my work, and I saw an improvement in the way I loved my work again, in the way I was passionate about it again. So that's why it's very important to take self-care days, take breaks. Because it refreshes your mind, it gives your mind a time to relax, it gives your mind time to rest. And lastly, or the third tip I want to give you guys, is to step out of your comfort zone or step out of your bubble. Because that's the only time you can actually learn, you can actually grow, you can actually succeed. There is comfort in staying in the known or staying in your little bubble. Obviously, it's more comfortable if you just do your routine or you just do the same thing you do every day. But the problem of that, or the danger of staying in the known zone, is that you could end up in a rut. And that's what happened to me. So I felt like I was a tireless robot where I just had to do my routine every single day. Like nothing was new, nothing changed. It was wake up, take a shower, have breakfast, do schoolwork, have lunch, do work, have dinner, play with my dogs, talk to family and friends, sleep. And at that point, I felt like I was just running on a code where like I just had to do this every single day. This was the only thing I was able to do. This was the only thing I should be doing, you know, following this certain routine. And because of that, I wasn't able to grow. I wasn't able to explore new things and like, you know, meet new people, which is super hard to meet new people during the pandemic. But you have to try, because it's the way you can learn, it's the way you can grow, it's the way you can experience new things. And that for me was very awakening at the point where, like, even though I was just at home, I got to meet new people through the internet. Through my business, I got to meet new people, which was super exciting at the same time. I was able to work on projects I've never worked with before because I went out of my comfort zone and I took opportunities to email new people or to message new people, which is super duper fresh and awakening, and it helps with your passion as well. So that's why I felt like I was still grounded to what I was passionate about with my business, because I was able to do new things. It wasn't the same thing over and over again. For 5 years of my business, I wasn't doing the same thing every single day. Every single day was a new challenge. Every single day I met new people. Every single day I did new things. I had new opportunities. Those are the 3 tips that I would give to anyone who feels like they're in a rut right now, or they feel like they're just a robot who's like tirelessly doing the usual routine that they do. I would really recommend to know your time management, of course, to get everything back in pace and to have your life sorted out. The second one is to find time for self-care days and give yourself a break. And the third one is to step out of your comfort zone and explore and learn and grow. And that's it. Bye!
Thank you very much, Ms. Nicole Long-O. Many of us students relate to having trouble with managing our energy. We appreciate your insight on how you overcame this struggle. Before we move on to the upcoming talks, let us watch and listen to an original song by Jody G entitled Sunlight.
We hope this next performance will reignite your hearts.
Don't you ever sun, no stars. Oh, but there will be light, no need to sigh. Just don't think you're all alone tonight. Oh, but feel the love around you. Don't let the pain consume you. Look around, light will shine. Let love see you through. Shimmering in the dark, you can almost see it. Shining in the dark, you can almost feel it. Watch of the Although you may wonder where to find this paradise, just reach deep down within. Within you will find the truth. Sunlight never fade away. Sunlight never die out. Sunlight never fade away. Never fade away. Never die Just look within and you will find it.
That was a really inspiring song. If you're ready for more inspiration, our next speaker is Zanaya C. Gray. She is a 9-year-old girl who lives with her mom, her dad, and her 3 hermit crabs. She is an aspiring author and illustrator and enjoys traveling and going on adventures with her family.
Zanaya loves school. Her favorite subjects are math and science. She's an avid figure skater and volleyball player. She's also a 2nd degree Taekwondo black belt. Zanaya hopes to visit the Philippines soon to see her family and friends. She will be giving a talk answering the question, can being bored be a good thing?
Being bored can be a good thing. Let me start my TED Talk by asking you, when was the last time you felt bored? Or have you heard students say school is boring? I certainly have. I even find myself getting bored sometimes. Lucky for me, something special came out of my boredom. Hi, my name is Zanaya Coral Gray. I am 9 years old and am currently in 4th grade. For students like me, how many hours of screen time do you get a day? I certainly spend quite a lot of time with my iPad at school and at home. Don't get me wrong, I love my iPad. In fact, I have 2 iPads and 1 laptop. Some of the apps that I frequently use are iMovie, GarageBand, Book Creator, Codable, and Cricut. Here's me with my favorite electronics. For adults, please take a moment to look at your laptop or phone. How many open apps or tabs do you have? I bet you mastered the art of juggling from one app just by the click of a button, even when you're not looking. Social media platforms like TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook have supplied us with endless feeds of videos and pictures. From the funny dance trends on TikTok to the amazing travel photos on Instagram. We can't help but keep on clicking, watching, and scrolling through endless feeds of entertainment. Unfortunately, towards the end of 2019, the most shocking thing happened. The world was faced with one of the most dangerous challenges of our lifetime, the coronavirus. When the pandemic started, my school had to switch to online learning in the spring of 2020. I was faced with hours of staring on my iPad for class Google meetings, doing online activities, completing my assignments, and occasionally online playdates. My friend's birthday party was a virtual spa day when we got to paint our nails, make oatmeal face masks, and with a nice cup of hot cocoa while staring at each other on the screen. It was a lot of fun at first, but then I got exhausted. The school was over and it was summer break. Sure, I was happy to have a break of school. I just didn't feel like I was having much fun. There was no summer plans, nowhere to go. Even my favorite parks were closed. What would you have done? I was bored. I was sad. Then, one day, my parents said, no iPad, no video games, no TV. Just do something different. Are you kidding me? How could you live a day without electronics? I was upset. It is like a person without a phone or a laptop, not knowing what's going on in the world. In fairness to my parents, they probably got me every arts and crafts available at Michael's or Amazon. Then it occurred to me that one of the things I enjoy most is writing. That is when my creativity for writing blossomed, a passion for writing. I remember a game I played with my friends at school. When we had to come up with characters, I sat down for hours and wrote descriptions of my characters. Drawing them and what they would look like, I created the foundation of my story, helped build the main character's personality, the way I had built mine when I first opened my eyes. I forged the antagonist out of black dust that had been from my experience of sadness and boredom. All of my dreams, thoughts, memories, and emotions are put into one story for the whole world to see. Then, little by little, day by day, I finished the story. I have written a lot. I have written a book-worthy story. So with the help of my parents, I decided to publish my book. Finally, in the spring of 2021, I published my book, Magic and Spells, Book 1, Bettini and the Silver Trident. Here's a picture of my book. You could see how happy I was. This one story that saved me that first day without scrolling through endless feeds of videos, without playing a video game, or watching Hollywood's newest and hottest releases. Not to mention a lot of movies were released later due to COVID. A story that I now look back to, a milestone in my life that I will always cherish and remember. That book helped me survive the indoor days of summer. Some of us during COVID were trapped, kept inside a continuous wheel of unfortunate boredom. Some of us turned to social media to compensate for our boredom. Don't get me wrong, social media supplies us with endless entertainment, and they are so funny to watch. The problem is, social media can cause overstimulation in some people. Overstimulation is not good for our brains, especially not for us kids. Overstimulation is when your senses are just completely overloaded with information, making it difficult, or sometimes near impossible, to fully process the information that you are receiving. So please take the time to put that electronic device down and do nothing. Parents, even if your kids get mad at you for taking away their electronic devices, let them be mad at you. Let their minds lead them to create something meaningful. Let them open their minds to search for their past, for their one and only true passion that they discovered early on in life. If they are young, just looking for their passion, help guide them to find their one passion. I sometimes compare creativity with an amaryllis flower. That over time will sprout from a graftling to a beautiful flower. It comes from within when you are in most need and have time to reflect on it. It will come out when you are quiet and still. Some of us couldn't see or let out the potential that always lingered in ourselves. The very potential that had lingered in ourselves when we were first born. A blind man can see it, and so can you. In fact, there are a lot of amazing things that were invented out of boredom. Allow your mind to wonder. Allow your mind to daydream. It will open up some room for creativity and problem solving. Being bored can be a good thing. It certainly led me to publishing my first book. Thank you for watching!
Wow, I didn't realize being bored is actually a good thing when it comes to discovering and fulfilling our passions. Thank you so much for your fun talk, Zanaya. Coming up next, Kate and Danny will present her talk, How Flexibility, Adaptability, and Creativity is the Answer in Moving Forward.
With a bachelor's degree from Le Cordon Bleu and master's degree in gastronomy, she's very knowledgeable about the cooking industry. She's also very experienced as she's the founder of both the Food and Wine Festival and Saturday Farmers Market. She's also part of the Food Tourism Board and is the president of the Anzani Hospitality International Group.
2 years after lockdown, I find myself in a very different space and an entirely different person. I found that adaptability and flexibility was the only way to move forward in such a changing time. Found creativity and reinventing yourself was the recurring theme from 2020 to 2022. Now, moving forward, I also found a life purpose that has never been there before. Here's my story. Your why is important. Why are you doing what you do? What were you doing? 2020 challenged our entire belief system. What worked before no longer did. And there was this long pause of a dark room, period. Everything needed change, and we stayed put long enough to break habits, rituals, and routine. I don't know about you, but I really liked my life before. I really did. It's just now, 2 years later, it seems like we are really living on purpose. I don't spend time beating on a wall, hoping for it to be a door. It's just we create our own doors now. And this is what being flexible has presented us 2 years later after lockdown. Well, it's what presented me. And let me explain. Your life purpose. Have you found it? Have you found your life purpose? Do you know what you want? Are you actively pursuing what you want? Or what you may have also reached to this point of what you thought you wanted no longer became the end goal. So all of us changed the entire paradigm of how to live our life. And which is very interesting because it all awakened all of us. Some got lost, some got stuck, some stayed in the dark. But here is what it's like to move forward. Just when I think I'm in my final form, I realize I'm nothing but a rough draft and that my potential is infinite. So that's from Ebony Davis, and that has stuck to me all throughout this lockdown pandemic, and even as we live back to the new normal or the new world order. I'm a restaurateur. My name is Kate, and I build brands. I also storytell through the creation of food, through the restaurants, through the TV show, with my TV. I engage, I connect, informing. The love language is cooking and nurturing. The questions I asked myself was how to be sustainable. How is it that everything we built and then lockdown happened could be everlasting? That became a long presented challenge. And in the middle of lockdown, the answer showed up that we needed to be creative and we needed to reinvent the entire game. We needed to be flexible. Let's talk about reinventing yourself. Everyone needed to adapt to the change, hence Zoom communication, but that didn't do it for me. If it did it for you, I'm extremely ecstatic. We all needed to experiment, but we never lost our life purpose. What is your why? So I went to one of Gary Vee's motivational talks, and he says, you have to dream big. You aim and target the stars, you get up to the moon. You aim to get to the moon, you get up to the sky. You aim for the sky, you hit the mountain. And if you aim for the mountain, you hit the ground. So you need to be dreaming so big that it scares you. But of course, in lockdown, what dreams are we talking about? But it's always good to benchmarks and keep the standards high. Because if you aim for the sky, you're okay to hit the moon, right? Exactly. This is where we're going to go. We all needed to learn the skills. We all needed to fail to learn. We needed to have an open mind in the 2 years. We didn't know what was going to happen next. We all needed to bend forward, bend backward, be flexible on how to handle the situation. From lockdown from government, from new rules to this. So I just shut it all off. So we chose to have fun, and we went kind of crazy. There was discipline involved. There was a process where it was so painful it hurt. But in that process of the lowest of low, I don't know if you realize, but that's when I grew the most. So let's talk over our best practices. So there was lockdown and our restaurants closed. We did a SWOT analysis. We had 6 chefs living in the property. Our kitchens were open, but we had no customers. So hence we received a phone call and if we could help do the food for the city because everyone had no access. So we ended up the first 3 months with a food bank. People would deliver food. Suddenly in 1 week we had 300 kilos of chicken. Our kitchen was a full production force. And that kept us busy and moving. And then suddenly I get a phone call from our food suppliers and the chain of farmers who didn't know what to do with their produce. Cabbage, lettuce, tomato. It came in truckloads and in kilos. So we assembled our friends. Would you like to buy 20 kilos? Would you like to buy an assemblage of your homes? And of course, you all know there was Facebook Marketplace and all the marketplaces where everyone would engage. So that kept us busy, and it evolved to helping the supply chain. So basically, those are one of the tricks. We got the supply chain impacted in our food supplier system in restaurants. We reused and we recycled all the things that we used to take for granted and the waste that we were doing. We realized too we had to cut down on all of that. We started feeding, cooking. We suddenly were feeding 200,000 meals. And we've never done that before because we were a restaurant that was about assembly and finesse. We've never done scale. So again, a new milestone arrived on our capacity to produce. We extended our help and mission to the community. Hence, the farmers market was born. Every Saturday it became an escape. Everyone would do their market day, and we held it outdoors at the Marco Polo Plaza. And that became our outlet for all the farmers to kind of just merge all their ingredients. And until today, a year after, it's still alive and it's still live. We got creative. We got creative to an extreme point that we ended up creating a food and wine festival. I kid you not, in the middle of a pandemic, all these chefs lost their jobs. All of them were like, we don't have income. So we started to talk to the board. We started to talk to the Department of Tourism. We started to talk recovery projects. How can we help them? Hence, the Cebu Food and Wine Festival was born in the middle of a pandemic. Looking back, it sounds so crazy how we were able to do all of that, but we made it happen because we were desperate to help everyone. And while helping everyone, we helped ourselves too. There was a lot of forward thinking we needed to do. And as a result, it gave so much more motivation to the industry of restaurants, of hotels, of chefs, of cocktails. So remember that looking back, we ended up with the food bank, the farmers market, and then we created a festival. Of course, very socially distant. And then the people I have never met in my life started to appear, government officials that were wanting to collaborate. Collaborate was a big word in the pandemic. I got involved with the Department of Tourism, and of course with social media. There was a lot of engagement. We had websites. We communicated how to tell everyone what was happening. Then there were partnerships. There was REST that was involved in the equation. Then there was planting. On November 2021, the awards started coming. We were in the middle of an ISO leveling, and we received an ISO 2014 and given the Green Choice Philippine Award. But wow, it was a big deal. We became one of the 3 restaurants in the Philippines that was certified green, and it took us 3 years to get there. So it gave motivation to us and the management and the staff. And then suddenly I was asked to mount for the Department of Tourism, a food tourism mount. I mean, I have never in my wildest dreams thought about getting engaged with the Department of Tourism, but only in the pandemic you saw everyone come together, position, and even from sky to sea to roots, you know. So it was a big deal to have to be able to arrive at this place because we were flexible and creative. we made noise, we didn't stop. We reaped all the things that we have done in the time that we just didn't know where to go. We just showed up, basically. We just said yes. And this is what flexibility teaches you. Something arrives, okay, an opportunity arrives, will do. So I feel in the 2 years, everything arrived. Didn't think to arrive to this place where I'm involved in tourism with the Department of Tourism, or to be involved in as a chairperson for tourism in the Chamber of Commerce, which is what we're currently doing now. A lot of things arrived in our lap, thinking we were just an individual restaurateur, retailer, telling a story, just connecting the dots. So in a nutshell, that's what arrived being flexible, adaptable, creative, reinventive, chasing excellence always. These are the habits to have to move forward. Here's what I learned through all of this. You need to practice to stay sharp. You need to keep your standards high. You experience the high and the low, but it's in the low that you grow the most. Be the best you can be at whatever it is, and there's no settling. It's important to be a team player, and it's also important to say, I don't know. It's not my expertise, and you're learning along the way. Do you see how in the middle of a pandemic, doors open, and it's important to give back? So when the world locked down, we should have just closed all the restaurants, but we didn't. We had the heartbeat, and we were creative, we were open, willing to change, willing to be adaptable to the time, never stuck, always moving. And this is the place that we arrived to, on the forefront of creating change for a city. Our city got demolished, and our city was hanging on a string, but 2022, there's a lot moving forward. And suddenly, we're pushed to a whole different dimension of leading, being in the forefront, and taking everyone with us. So many doors opened because we were flexible to problem solve, to do better, do the work. And through it all, I don't know what the future brings. I still don't know what the next step is. However, we will always be curious. We will always be vulnerable, showing weakness. But weakness, I realize, is just showing what you don't know, and you're hoping that, hey, can you help me with this expertise? And really speaking your truth. It's important to move forward with all of this and then give back.
Thank you so much for sharing your personal experience with adaptability, Ms. Kay and Zani. We must continue to stay flexible as we're faced with future problems, just like the current pandemic. Before we get back, we have another performance to show.
Let us welcome Marian G presenting a time-lapse of her painting and introducing us to her art process.
So hello, my name is Marian Ginto, and I'm going to be walking you through my process of how I made this watercolor portrait painting. So first, let's try to understand the medium we're working with. We're using watercolors, so we're going to be using, water and color as the name states. So we have to, change the lightness and darkness of pigments using only water. And we actually cannot use white paints, so we can't layer lighter colors on top of another color, so we can only go darker with watercolor. that's what makes it the hardest medium. So let's go with the process. I'm putting down a light wash of the lightest colors, so light yellow, light pink, light blue, light green, and then I move on to adding layers and layers of different colors. So as I add more layers, it gets darker. So after the first layer, which is like the highlights, I then move to adding shadows. So here I am using a few brushes. I like to have one brush that places down paint and one that that kind of like blends or spreads the pigment. So after putting layers, I go on with like pure paints. So I use that for the hair and for the eyes. And then after I'm done with the face, the whole face, the eyes, nose, and mouth, I then move to the hair and even background. And then for the hair, I use a really dark blue. I try to avoid using blacks in my paintings because it just makes the painting much more livelier, and I don't know how to explain it. It just looks a lot better if you're using a different color other than black. So that's my one tip that I'll always keep around. And after I place down everything that needs to be placed, I then fix up everything by adding shadows, finishing touches, strands of hair, and that's pretty much it.
We hope that performance has helped you connect or maybe even reconnect with your artistic passions. In just a moment, Jude Picasso, a professional storyteller, travel writer, photographer, and aquatic and terrestrial biologist, will give her talk. She studied genetics at the University of the Philippines.
She's also a very skilled writer, having written for Smile Magazine and Mabuhay Magazine. As she carries experience in speaking, we hope you enjoy her next talk. Reignite your post-pandemic life by telling better stories.
Maayong adlaw ka natong tanan. My name is Jude Bacalso and I am a professional storyteller. This raises the obvious questions. What does one take up in school to become a professional storyteller? Is that even a real career? And once I'm done with you, how do I sign up for it? Storytelling started out very early for me. My father, who was a chemical engineer, worked in mining companies all over the country. So he was away from home for most of my growing up years, but he wrote me letters. These were always handwritten on lined yellow pad. Remember those? Black, sometimes blue ink, and no less than 3 pages long. Back to back. When I went off to university in Los Baños, Laguna, they would arrive by mail in crisp white envelopes, which I imagined he licked himself to seal them, leaving behind traces of his DNA as a sort of layer of protection to feast his thoughts poured on paper. I have to admit that my feelings toward these letters changed through the years. They were a roller coaster from excitement to dread, especially when he noticed that his firstborn son came home every vacation with thinner and thinner eyebrows. And I often got admonished in his letters. But no matter how I felt about them, they arrived still and remained beautifully written, both in penmanship and substance. He strung letters into words, into sentences, into paragraphs, into lessons in life, often peppered with Bible verses, complete with book, chapter, and verse, especially the years that he became a non-denominational preacher. My mother, on the other hand, also had beautiful penmanship with elaborate loops, dashes that between you and I made it quite difficult to forge. But she seldom wrote to us except for quick notes like gone to the grocery or don't watch my Betamax tapes, because she rented these R-rated dramas that were all the rage in the 80s. What she lacked there, she made up for buying us books, and a very particular type too. She would scar Colon Street and discovered a secondhand bookstore called Music House. Now, I assume it started as a place to sell musical notes and later on carried books, and would often come home with treasures like, from memory, Louisa May Alcott's Little Women and Moby Dick, which isn't completely responsible for how I turned out, just as a disclaimer. But secondhand books had a magic in them. They were yellowed, so there was a palpable element of time passing, and some edges were frayed, folded to earmark a page the previous owner particularly liked, and some even had notes in the margins. And I was able to enter someone else's mind just by reading their thoughts on the page. It was an exhilarating escape. But by far, my favorite thing about secondhand books, which is really lost on the pristine brand new ones and totally absent in the digital versions, was their smell. They were musky and dusty, and I was addicted. Every time I would travel, I still carry one of these with me to the day. Not necessarily to read, I have to be honest, because I have my K-drama downloaded on my phone for emergencies. And in-flight entertainment has since expanded. And since I work for in-flight magazines, there's that treasure trove too. But I carry books around to sniff every now and then. Although I was obviously brought up on a steady diet of books and letters, I went to do the sciences. UP Los Baños is the science center of excellence for the entire system, and I took full advantage of that. I actually have a degree in genetics. I became a charter member of the Philippine Genetics Society, was one of the first accredited environmental preparers in the country. And to this day, I practice as a field biologist. The science actually gave a new edge to my storytelling by providing me with a new perspective on things. Coming from the micro level of cells, DNA, and microscopic elements to the macro, the world at large, so to speak. And although I had zero background in journalism, I wasn't even part of my high school or college papers, science actually equipped me with the same discipline, even if I didn't know it at that time. For one, science is heavy on the research. And because this was the early 90s, the internet had only been introduced into the world, and research at that time meant going to the actual library, using the Dewey Decimal System, finding a book, flip through its pages, and repeat it as many times as necessary. And because we dealt with empirical data, it was something that could be repeated in controlled conditions and verified. Always verify. So somewhere between practicing environmental science and hosting events, which was in the early 2000s, I became a travel writer and photographer. Mainly because I was too cheap to pay for airfare in combination. So you have to remember that this was before Airbnb and low-cost airline carriers. My first paycheck actually for storytelling was from a contribution I made to Sunstar. It's the largest network of community newspapers in the country. And it was a profile story on the Club Twins, who took over the operations of the storied Vienna Coffee House. It's a Cebuano classic dining spot. A few months after that, I became an editor in the soft pages, which dealt with lifestyle, food, travel, and general features, as opposed to news pages, which are the hard pages. When you get paid to do something, that's when you can call yourself a professional. And after earning those stripes, here are my professional tips on how to tell a story. One caveat: there is no wrong or right way to do so, and each storyteller's style is actually informed by their experiences, just like mine is, which makes the storytelling process and the products of it so much more varied. So let's start. Number one, get lost. When you get the opportunity to do so, get lost. Buy a ticket to anywhere. Sleep where sleep finds you. Ditch the map. Don't make an itinerary. As a travel writer, there are assignments where everything has been pre-planned for you, very similar to how you would normally travel in a group arranged by an agency. You're told when to wake up, where to go, and what to eat. But the democratization of travel has allowed us a free hand to choose for ourselves. This doesn't mean you ditch all the touristy things to do. They are a cliche for a reason. If it is your first time at a destination, do not skip the tourist traps, but get lost in between at every chance you get. When I was nursing my nth heartache a couple of years ago, I decided I wanted to be miserable in a first world country and flew to Japan on the fly. I have to admit, being the brand ambassador of an airline and having a brother who is a pilot comes in handy when you want to high off somewhere last minute. The last time I paid for a flight was actually decades ago, but even if you pay for every single travel item, getting lost is still fun, trust me. I arrived, took the train to my Airbnb, which I chose because it offered a single room with toilet for only 1,500 pesos a night in Tokyo, which wasn't a capsule hotel. That was an amazing deal. So clicked on it, and the address it said was Asakusa, which I knew nothing about. Little did I know about the surprise that was coming. The accommodation was in a small ryokan, a traditional Japanese inn with a communal coin-operated bath, but with modern conveniences every traveler will appreciate. It was unlocked with, like most homes and establishments in Japan, and mostly self-service. It was exactly what I wanted. Right next door, to my surprise, was Hanayashiki, operating since 1853 and the oldest amusement park in the whole of Tokyo. I could hear them screaming. Just a few meters from my quiet corner was Sensoji, the oldest and one of the most visited temples in the country, built in the 7th century. And further on, and my personal favorite was Kamiya. This is the first bar in Japan that opened in 1880, where I had a shot of their signature drink, Denki Brand. It's a brandy-based cocktail. I spent Christmas in Japan by myself with only 5,000 pesos pocket money. I'm not kidding. And got to see a traditional kabuki in their national theater. I met Hachiko, walked legendary Shibuya crossing, and had a delicious meal at a hidden 10-seater restaurant called, it's spelled Groin, or groin. When I asked the owner why he named it that, he says, it's the sound of the pig. I asked him, in Japan? No, he says, in France. Groin. I hope his restaurant has survived the pandemic, and do tell me if you happen to drop by. So I got lost, and it paid off very, very well. Number 2 tip, ask questions. The Basilica del Santo Niño is the oldest Roman Catholic church in the country, built right where the miraculous image of the child Jesus was found to survive a fire in 1561. Everyone is familiar with the small chapel to the side where the image is housed behind bulletproof glass, and the main altar with its array of Augustinian saints. But did it ever occur to you to ask, but what is behind that? I was lucky enough to blurt out this question one night many years ago in the presence of the Augustinians who run the basilica, and their eyes twinkled. The answer turned out to be more than I had imagined. Right behind the main altar is an almost 500-year-old library with books written in vellum. That's acid-free sheepskin. It also features a giant 2-headed eagle with wings spread, which is the coat of arms of the Habsburgs, one of the most powerful royal families in Europe. It opened to the public only in 2000 and is accessed by a stairway behind the queue to see the image of the Santo Niño. So ask those questions and never take things as they are. If I had assumed that the altar ended with that wall, I would never have known of this secret annex. Tip number 3, queue up. There's always an interesting story at the end of any queue. The food may not be to your liking or the activity not up to your standards, but it will always carry an interesting tale with it. When I was asked to do a story on seafood places in Cebu, it took me to the town of Cordova. At the very end of a paved but very dusty road, I found myself between 2 restaurants. Now, one was right on the water's edge, afforded a nice view, and had good solid tables and chairs. The other one was a little bit more rundown, was half the size of the other restaurant, had no view, was dark inside, but was full, and had a line of diners going on outside. I chose the one with a queue and wrote about it. The story was actually picked up by the producers of Jiro, Dreams of Sushi, who also makes Chef's Table. That's my absolute favorite food documentary series. The team actually flew in to shoot this tiny shack and made its owner an international food star, with fans flying into Cebu from all over the world to meet him, give him his favorite candies, and eat his nilarang na bakasi. That's a sour soup made from eels. Now, that story eventually became the Netflix documentary Street Food, which airs worldwide to this day and has made Noy Entoy Escabas immortal. He passed away last year in the height of COVID lockdowns, but peacefully in his sleep. To this day, I'm glad I chose the one with a line. Number 4, remember the baggage carousel. We all arrive with baggage, both literally and figuratively. The story of Oslob's whale shark interaction has always been a touchy one for me. Because I am an aquatic biologist, I share the opinion with the international community that the domestication of migratory species, like the whale shark, is dangerous. I've always refused to write about them as a feature when the magazine came calling, and choosing more sustainable and eco-responsible stories instead was the route I would always take. But when Nat Geo and this year's Nobel official photographer, Hannah Reyes Morales, a very good friend of mine, asked me to produce a story for her on how Oslob's once thriving tourism industry is surviving the pandemic, I could not say no. Our multifaceted story on the locals landed on the cover of the New York Times and unlocked many of the baggage I had been carrying around. I could no longer shout, "Save the whale sharks," and not scream, "Save the sea wardens," and this whole town too. The story and that experience turned everything I knew about this destination on its head. Especially when Hannah and I learned that the man who single-handedly gave birth to this industry, that at some point in 2019, pre-pandemic, brought in as much as $3.5 million to the town. This guy committed suicide a few days before our scheduled interview, and was found with an empty stomach and in deep financial woes, alone in a rented room. So I left an Awan on a bus to the city at 4 a.m. with a heavy heart, but none of my mental baggage arriving into Oslob. I had lived with the locals for a week, followed them from dawn to dusk, climbed up the hills where they lived, and swam in the waters where they worked. I listened to their stories and met the gentle giants they claim to be stewards of, who they can tell apart from the unique constellation of spots on their backs. I left my baggage on that carousel. Which brings us to the questions we raised right at the very beginning. Whatever you take up in school, you can be a storyteller, but your voice and the stories you tell will be informed and will take on the flavor of your unique life path and opinions. Yes, it is a real career that doesn't pay much in cash, but more than makes up for it in experience. And it will change lives. Which leaves us with the last item on our list. Do you still want to sign up?
Thank you so much, Ms. Jude Picasso. You have really ignited our passion to keep exploring the world. I'm sure students will definitely be able to tell better stories after being inspired by your story. Now, with another perspective on the concept of Ikigai, let us welcome educator John Nico Kuyoka. He graduated from CIT University with a degree in AB Communication and was a top 1 Prangal awardee as a presidential scholar.
Currently, he's pursuing a Master of Arts in Educational Administration in the University of San Jose Recoletos. At present, he is the academic chairman for Senior High School Math and Research at the University of San Jose Recoletos and was awarded as one of the 6 world finalists in the 2020 Most Dedicated Teacher Awards by the Cambridge University Press. He will be talking about finding your place where you can be more.
What do you want to be when you grow up? Many often ask this question to the young ones. In fact, at some point in our lives, we have been asked by this same question, and it made us ponder on what we want to do when we grow up. On my case, I can still vividly remember when I was in grade 4 and I was asked by this same question. With energy and enthusiasm, I answered, I want to be a journalist. Ever since I was a child, I have always been told that the only way to achieve my dreams is to study hard. I have to study hard to get a good grade, for me to graduate with Latin honors, for me to land in a better job to earn money, thus pursuing the dream to earn money. And so I studied hard. I was a consistent top honor student of my class in high school, and I got a full academic scholarship. In high school, things started to change. Sometimes I wanted to pursue political science. Other days, I wanted to take up journalism. And other days, I just wake up thinking that I want to be an accountant and a lawyer. Just like any other high school student, I also had a hard time thinking on what program to pursue in college. I graduated valedictorian in high school and was offered with a full academic scholarship. However, it was a hard decision to take since one of the requirements of the scholarship is for me to take up an engineering program. I'm good in mathematics, but I never dreamed of becoming an engineer. So I looked into all of my options, and on top of my considerations was our financial ability to sustain and support my academics. And so, I took up the scholarship, I accepted the scholarship, enrolled in one of the universities here in Cebu, and took up mechanical engineering. Studying mechanical engineering, though it wasn't my first love and my first choice, was still fun. I was able to meet a lot of new people, meet amazing mentors, and experienced a lot of new things that opened new doors and opportunities for me to explore. I started joining different organizations, and I even started also volunteering into different community programs, capacitating the youth, and these activities have become my breather in studies. Interestingly, I also became a part of our official student publication in the university, where I met a lot of people of different programs from different year levels with different stories and backgrounds. I even became the editor-in-chief of the student press, and it is when that I realized that it's okay if I didn't push through with journalism, because I was a student journalist. And I was able to do what I would really love to do when I was still in elementary. One of the highlights of my student organizations in college is the peer learning program. The peer learning program is an organization in our university where I served as one of the volunteer pioneer peer mentors, which eventually I also became the president of that organization. It's an organization where there are volunteer peer mentors willing to assist and help those students who are academically challenged. We offer quiz bowls and tutorials in mathematics, sciences, and even in programming classes. We started this peer learning center, a center where those students who have difficulties in their subjects can go in, and there are willing and volunteer peer mentors waiting for them, willing to assist them. So the peer learning program through the Peer Learning Center has become a place where learning is fun, exciting, and inspiring in our school. With all of these engagements, I was still able to maintain my academic scholarship. But as I became closer and closer to the finish line, I started to lose that motivation and interest to finish my program. It was on the end of the first semester of my 5th year journey in mechanical engineering, after my internship, that I suffered from depression and anxiety. With all of the things that I have been doing, I just felt tired. I felt unmotivated. There were a lot of questions. There were a lot of doubts. And deep inside, I know in myself that I was tired and that I needed to rest. And so, I decided to shift to another program and quit my engineering journey. I decided to pursue something that I thought at that time was something that I really love, which is journalism. So I quit on my mechanical engineering journey, even if that meant losing my scholarship and starting over again. I know that you might probably say that what I did was a waste of time and resources. Honestly, there were a couple of times that I asked myself if what I did was right. You know, I was graduating with honors. I was on my last semester in college. I do have a scholarship. And all in a sudden, I just shifted to a program which is far, far from mechanical engineering. But at that moment, when I took that decision, I was at the peak of my emotions. I was emotionally unstable. I just felt tired and nobody was there to guide me. But it already happened. Did I regret it? Yes, at some point. But if you are going to ask me now if I still regret it, then definitely it's a no. It took me 7 years to get that college diploma. 4.5 years of studying mechanical engineering and 2.5 years for me to finish my communications program. At that time I graduated, most of my batchmates in high school and college already started working. But I guess it's really right when they say that when one door is closing, another one will open for you. And in my case, that door that opened is much greater. When I graduated in college, right after my graduation, I was given the opportunity to be one of the Filipino youths to represent Philippines in a student cultural immersion program in Europe, specifically in Netherlands and Belgium, through the Young Minds on Explore program of the Ramon Aboitiz Foundation Incorporated, and it's all for free. It was this program that I was able to immerse myself into the culture of the different countries, and I also met amazing people who share the same passion as mine. We have this education day in this program wherein we visited a lot of educational institutions. We visited schools and universities, and we get to meet students and get to interact with them. And so, when I went back here in Cebu, I decided to become a teacher. It was then that I realized, I think I have found my place. So I decided to apply as a senior high school teacher in one of the universities here in Cebu, and I was so lucky that I was accepted. So, because I am about to teach, I needed to have a teaching license. And so I needed to study again. I took up diploma on public education. And after that, I took the board exam and I was able to pass the board exam. On my first semester of teaching, I was teaching English. But on the next semester already, when the department knew of my background in engineering and mathematics, I was transferred to the math and research cluster in the department. And as you see, you know, deep inside, I knew that my years of studying mechanical engineering was not put into waste. Because from being an English teacher, I was transferred to being a mathematics teacher, and I was able to teach mathematics already. And it's something that I love doing. And on my first year of teaching, for me, it was one of the best years of my life because I was so passionate and I was so dedicated that every day I feel like waking up, feeling and doing something that I love. And you know what? When you love what you do, it will really resonate in your students. Every day I come into the class being excited, meeting my students, knowing that on this day, it's not just them learning from me, but it's also me learning from them. And so, in that 1 year of teaching, I was promoted to become the academic chairman of the math and research cluster of our department. And I looked at it really as an opportunity for me to be able to further my causes. In the first year, while I was being promoted as the academic chairman, I was able to innovate and create programs that would surely impact into our students. We launched Motivation Campaign. Motivation Campaign is actually a campaign where we motivate students to love and learn mathematics. At the same time, we also conduct our weekly quiz balls, and we benchmarked the peer learning program that I started in college into a peer mentoring program through our Reaching for You learning sessions. And on the research part, we also are having our annual Senior High School Research Summit, where we're bringing together senior high school students for them to showcase their research innovations, their research practices, and their innovations, even including their research mentors. We are inviting them. So in that years of being able to serve in the math and research cluster, I was able to become a mentor to the future mentors, which is something that I really love to do. And because of this, I am very happy that I also have my team. And it's through the math and research cluster that I was really able to feel, and I was really able to say to myself, deep inside myself, that I am on the right place. Because I am on the right people, and I was able to do something that I truly love, which is contributing a need to the society. And because of this, I am very fortunate enough to be awarded as one of the world's top 6 finalists to the Cambridge University Press Award for the Most Dedicated Teacher Awards. Looking back at all of these things, I think it's really true when they say that everything makes sense in the right time. That indeed, Steve Jobs is right when he said that we can't connect the dots by looking forward. We can only connect them looking backwards. I believe that my 7-year-long journey in mechanical engineering and in college has prepared me for the things that I'm really destined to do. All of these activities have made me become more so I can do more and give more for others. Frederick Buechner even once said that the place God calls us into is a place where our deep gladness and the world's hunger meet. And this has been my guiding principle as to where I am at this very moment. So the question is, where am I at this very moment? What am I doing at this very moment? Now today, let me tell you and share to you a concept. This is not a new concept, but I think this is something that only a few people were able to look into. And it's a Japanese concept of ikigai. Ikigai is a Japanese term that would literally mean what is worth living for when we translate it. Right after this talk, I would like you to spend a moment of silence, of self-reflection, and reflect on the following questions, because these questions are necessary for you to be able to reflect on your ikigai. The first question is, what are you good at? When we say what are you good at, these are your skills. These are your talents. These are the things that you can do. Again, what are the things that you are good at? That's the first question. The second question is, what's the world's need? What does the world needs? These are the problems of the world that we face. These are the problems that you discover. These are the problems that pained you the most. These are the problems that hurt you the most. The third question is, what do you love doing? When we say what do you love doing, these are the things that will wake you up in the morning with excitement. These are the things that make you fulfill. These are the things wherein when you do these things, you feel that fulfillment. And these are the things that when you wake up every day, you will really want to wake up because you want to do these things. So again, what are the things that you love doing? And the last one is, what do you get paid? These are the things that you do, the things that you create, wherein you are paid, wherein you are get paid for. So when you try to look at all of these questions, what are you good at? What does the world needs? What do you love doing? And what do you get paid? Your ikigai is the intersection of what you love doing, what the world needs, what you are good at, and what you are paid for. And that is your ikigai. Pursuing what we are passionate about is not as simple as doing what we love. I would like to believe that where and what we are destined to do goes beyond what we are passionate about. Passion is not constant. It's purpose that stays within. With passion, we do what we love, but with purpose, we do what we love that contributes to a need, and that's what makes us wake up every day with excitement. Let me go back back to my first question. What do you want to be when you grow up? A journalist? An engineer? A teacher? I think it doesn't really matter. What matters is how you do wherever you go. And I think that instead of asking young kids what they want to be when they grow up, there is a better question that we need to ask young people. And that is, what kind of person would you want to be? Instead of asking them what they want to do or what they want to be when they grow up, ask them what kind of person they would want to be. A person who is the first believer of my student, a person who never gives up to a learner, a person who will continue to make learning fun, exciting, and inspiring. A person who will continue to dream that I can change the world one student at a time. A person who teaches and learns. A person who is continuously growing and will help others to grow. One who is able to impact change, inspire others, and empower others to become the best versions of themselves. That is me, and that is where I am right now. This is me. And while others may still say that I've wasted years of my life just to become a teacher, I know that I can genuinely look at them, smile at them, knowing that deep inside my heart, I know that I am on my place. I am on the place that I'm truly happy. I am on a place where I am confidently doing what I love. And I am on my place where I am at my best in the service for others. So how about you? What kind of person do you want to be when you grow up? Ladies and gentlemen, continue to do what you are in love to do. Continue to do what you are good at. Because when you love what you do, you become unstoppable. Continue doing what you love, knowing that things may be difficult, but you are tougher. Be unstoppable. Continue to become more so you can do more and be the kind of person others would look up to. And when you dream, dream not just for yourself. Bring with you your aspirations and dreams for yourself, for your community, and for your country. Thank you, everyone.
That talk is especially helpful for students who are nearing their graduation and finding out what they want to do. Thank you very much for sharing your story, Mr. Koyoko. We admire how you always persevered and took risks despite the hardships. Our final performance of the day will be Fiona B. demonstrating Arnis.
Arnis is a Philippine martial art. In this video, Fiona is sparring with her coach. She is learning the balintawak, or the combative style of the sport. The sticks are extensions of the arms, so the techniques learned can be applied with your bare hands.
Tuyok man gyapon ni ma'am. Balik dali.
That was a really great demonstration. Maybe some of us will discover a new hobby for ourselves. We're on the final set of speakers with Tara Santos coming right up. She is a 23-year-old climate activist and multimedia artist. She's currently the national coordinator of Extinction Rebellion Philippines while supervising digital content creation for other climate change groups.
Her main focus is using environmental research and design as a tool for community building and inspiring change. Her personal research revolves around eliminating plastic pollution in the Philippines by looking at systems of classism, colonialism, and consumerism. When she's not doing climate work, you can catch her roller skating, reading, and spending time with her pets. Let us welcome her talk, Fighting Climate Change Anxiety Through Community and Action.
When I was in the 6th grade, my homeroom teacher gave my classmates and I an assignment to write a letter addressed to our future selves. At the time, my 12-year-old self had no idea where I or the world would end up in 10 years. But I surprised myself when I got an Instagram message from my 6th grade teacher with that same letter from my 12-year-old self attached. In this letter, I wrote a lot of things that ended up being true. I studied in New York and Europe for university. We now have touchscreen TVs and eco-friendly cars. And I'm definitely a lot more risk-taking compared to my shy 12-year-old self. And though a lot of my predictions ended up becoming reality, there was one that didn't quite make it. In this letter, I wrote, "People around you seem to take care of your environment. Your surroundings are now clean and you're getting interested in new animals. New animals, in fact, since humans start global warming." And it was a heart-sinking feeling to realize 10 years later that I couldn't have been further away from the truth. Since I wrote that letter in 2010, carbon in the atmosphere has increased by almost 7%. Sea levels have begun to rise 2.5 times faster than their average rate, and experts calculate that up to 100,000 animal species have gone extinct every year since then as a result of human activity. When I realized the amount of time that had passed since writing this letter and the lack of progress being made towards solving the climate crisis, I knew that I had to take action. At this point, my activism consisted of what I considered small acts to help the climate crisis. I tried to lead a zero-waste lifestyle, reduced my meat consumption, and generally tried to reduce my carbon footprint. I had even started a coral reef restoration project and a few ocean cleanups. But there was a small part of me that couldn't help but think, there must be more that I could do. So I started educating myself, which I think is the first step in taking any kind of climate action. I immersed myself in environmental documentaries and books, started following climate activists and scientists on social media, and attending webinars online. I even signed up for environmental classes for university that semester. And although educating myself was an extremely important step in finding my footing as an activist and just learning more about the climate crisis, I found myself feeling extreme bouts of climate anxiety, sadness, and frustration the more I learned about it. But also, who could blame me? I was learning that only 100 companies were responsible for 71% of global emissions, responsible for the rising sea levels, increasing typhoons and landslides that were not only affecting my home country of the Philippines, but other countries in the global south as well. Many of these countries emitting the lowest amount of carbon globally, yet being affected by the climate crisis the most. And this was basically my introduction to climate justice. When I learned that the climate crisis disproportionately affects marginalized and already vulnerable communities in the global south the most, my desire to help solve it grew even bigger. I wanted to hold the people responsible for the climate crisis accountable. It was an overwhelming feeling to figure out my place as an activist at first, because there were so many issues to tackle, communities to help, and I simply just didn't know where to start. But to my luck, I stumbled upon a video of a group of protesters from a climate group called Extinction Rebellion, or XR for short. They were in front of the UK Parliament building, waving bright colored signs reading, "Act now and tell the truth," chanting their demands for the UK government to declare a climate and ecological crisis. It was something I've never seen before, and therefore something I really wanted to be a part of. So after a few Google searches, I found XR Universities US, a subgroup of XR in the US comprised of university students. I sent them a message on Instagram, and the next thing I know, I'm joining climate workshops hosted by XR and planning my first climate action at the beginning of March of 2020. My first action or protest was a die-in in front of New York City's City Hall, demanding universities in the city to divest from fossil fuels. The amazing feeling that I got from organizing that action, connecting with people who shared the same values as me, made me forget about the climate anxiety and frustration that I was feeling. And this made me want to bring XR to the Philippines. So I started contacting representatives from XR and started planning the group's call to action, which was to hold governments and industries responsible for the climate crisis accountable for what they've done. Everything was going as planned until the world was put to a halt due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Starting XR Philippines from my bedroom was an extremely difficult yet gratifying experience. The online platform allowed me to connect with activists just not from the Philippines but from around the world, allowing me to share the effects of the climate crisis to an even bigger stage. I was learning every day about climate justice, planning campaigns with different organizations that I look up to, and getting the opportunity to speak at online events. I also got to meet some amazing friends. It was a rush of many things, a lot of unlearning, relearning, and a lot of hard work. But I was honestly just ecstatic to be a part of this community that was so dedicated to making change. And despite the joy that this movement gave me, I started to notice that the feeling of climate anxiety was getting harder and harder to push away, which was understandable given that most of my time was being consumed by climate organizing, reading about the climate crisis, or talking about the climate crisis. And because of this, my climate anxiety became my sole reason for pursuing activism, which was honestly a red flag. And after nearly a year of non-stop organizing and saying yes to every opportunity that I could get, I finally burned out. During my break, I reflected on a lot of things, but most importantly, I reflected on the importance of community. After all, it was the support in my community that gave me the confidence to join the climate movement and to start XR in the Philippines. And it's their support that continues to give me the joy that I feel while doing this work, despite the feelings of climate anxiety, fear, and pressure that inevitably come with being a climate justice activist. Not only that, but I also realized that there was no way I could create any change in the long run with a mentality that didn't allow me to rest or take any time for myself, despite the importance and urgency of the climate crisis. It made me realize that the small acts of activism that I was doing before joining XR or joining the climate movement formally, they weren't small at all, because activism looks completely different for everyone. It can look like planning campaigns, joining strikes, to sending petitions, or even sharing posts on Instagram and starting conversations with your family and friends. I think that building community and taking action is the only way we'll ever achieve climate justice, or any kind of social change for that matter. It may sound cliche, but every act truly counts. I'd like to end with the closing line of the letter I wrote to myself in 6th grade. It goes, "You resolve problems by being responsible, and you also try to find good ways to fix problems without hurting anything." The only thing I wish I'd added to this line is that in the fight for climate justice, you have to remember that not hurting anything includes not hurting yourself in the process. Thank you.
As a school community that's concerned with climate change, we must also look out for each other when it comes to dealing with climate anxiety. We loved your talk, Ms. Santos. Thank you so much. Finally, our last talk of the day will be presented by Audrey Pe, currently studying at Stanford University.
She's the founder and executive director of WeTech, a nonprofit organization based in the Philippines that aims to educate, inspire, and empower youth to make a difference and break gender barriers using technology. She founded it at age 15. She's also very experienced in giving talks, so we hope you enjoy what she's about to present today, Bridging the Digital Divide.
Hi everyone, and thank you so much to the organizers of TEDx Cebu International School for inviting me to speak today. My name is Audrey Pe, and I'm the founder and executive director of WeTech, which is short for Women in Technology. WeTech is a global youth-led nonprofit organization based in the Philippines, but with over 20 chapters spread out across 10 countries around the world. We aim to educate, inspire, and empower youth to break gender barriers and use tech to make a difference in society. I started VTech when I was 15, a sophomore in high school, and now I'm 21 and a sophomore at Stanford University, where I major in science, technology, and society with a minor in education. Now, how did I get here? How did I first get my start in the nonprofit and tech scene and slowly build VTech from a local to an international community of young people that want to break gender and accessibility barriers in tech? My story really starts in a middle school computer classroom. I was born and raised in Manila, Philippines, and I had to take this government-mandated computer class. And for those of you that are familiar with it, this computer class had actually little to do with programming, and in the curriculum it mostly focused on how to use Microsoft Office. Think Word, PowerPoint, Excel. And when I was in middle school, I didn't find that too exciting until one day my teacher decided to go off curriculum and introduced us to this game where a snake had to navigate a maze using blocks that represented lines of code. I remember being so excited and thinking and realizing for the first time in my life that a lot of the technology that I had grown up with and gotten used to was made using code. And that the social media apps, the games that I had accessed online, those were all made using programming languages. So this discovery really excited me and I wanted to learn more. But when I went to my computer teacher and said that I wanted to learn more about programming or technology in general, she said that it isn't part of the computer curriculum. But if I was really keen on learning further, I could go online and look up free resources from there. So that's what I did. When I wasn't studying or in clubs throughout middle school and early high school, I would be in front of my laptop Googling how to learn how to code or free computer science tutorials. And in that process, I was able to go on sites like code.org, where I played games where Anna and Elsa from Frozen created snowflakes using blocks that represented lines of code. I was able to go onto YouTube and find Harvard's CS50, which is an introductory CS course. I was able to find their lectures all online for free. And then I went on Codecademy and I did their modules on JavaScript, Java, Python, etc. Slowly but surely, I built up this DIY knowledge base about tech and programming specifically. So that when fast forward to my first year of high school, I started getting asked these really scary questions about what I wanted to be when I grew up, what kind of major I wanted to pursue. And in the Philippine SHS system, as you likely all know, we have to specialize or choose like what track we want to pursue by the end of our sophomore year. So already I was kind of being forced to decide what I wanted to focus on, whether it be STEM, humanities, accountancy, business management, etc. And I said to a lot of people that were asking that I wanted to go into STEM and focus on tech specifically. I was met with a lot of mixed responses. The girls in my class said I was really brave for wanting to do so because at that time I was the only girl that wanted to go into the STEM track, or one of two girls, my bad. And the other girl wanted to go into medicine, so very different from my aspirations in tech. Overall, at the time, I was the only girl that wanted to go into tech specifically, and all the guys that wanted to go into tech were very surprised as well because they said that they didn't know I was into video games. Because to them, technology exclusively meant video game development. Whereas I was getting really interested in technology for social good, thinking about the potential applications that tech has on our day-to-day lives and how we can use it to make it better. But the feedback that really hit me the hardest was when a teacher told me, "Audrey, parang di ka bagay sa tech," which translates to, "Audrey, you don't seem like a good fit for tech." And the more that I really thought about her words, the more that I realized that I agreed with her and that I felt like I wasn't a good fit for tech because I couldn't imagine myself in the field of tech. I couldn't think of any tech role models, much less Filipina role models in technology. When I thought of the big names in the tech industry, I thought of people like Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, basically middle-aged white guys that I had very little in common with. So that got me thinking, where are the women in tech and why don't I know their stories? Why don't I have them as my role models instead? I did what any teenager really does when they're in search of an answer to a question. I went on Google and I quite literally Googled women in technology. I found all these stats that basically confirmed my suspicions about how unequal the tech industry was and still currently is. I read that according to the Philippine Startup Survey, only 18% of tech companies in the Philippines were founded by women. And I found out that, according to Ithaca, an IT governance organization, that gender gap persists internationally. I read that, according to PayScale, women in tech are paid 18 to 22% less than their male counterparts. And so as I was reading these statistics about the gender gap, instead of getting discouraged, I got really, really fired up. And I got really upset. And I was thinking, why do these inequalities still exist in a field that is being really marketed to us as the future? And what good is this future if it's only really being pushed towards half of the world's population? So I wanted to not just empower myself at that time, but also empower other young girls into believing that we have a stake in this future led by technology. And we have the power to create our own pieces of technology that can help so many people in the world around us. And that was the inspiration that started, or that was the line of thought that started WeTech. WeTech began as a blog that I had founded in 2016 to feature the different stories of women in technology that I had networked with online. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by networked with online? I just literally went on the hashtag women in tech on Instagram and LinkedIn, and I kid you not, like slid into the DMs of all these women that were doing amazing work in tech and different facets of it. I would message women in biochemistry, in digital marketing, and software development, robotics, etc. And I would say something along the lines of, "Hi there, my name is Audrey. At the time, I was 15, and I'm looking for role models in tech, but I don't have any in my immediate community. I am based in Manila, Philippines, and I would love if we could hop on a call or if I could send you via email some questions about your specific work in technology, and I'll write up your story into a blog post that can not only inspire me, but other young girls around the world." That blog was a turning point because it set up basically this collection of stories from young women, from not just women in technology from the Philippines, but from places like the Netherlands, Australia, Malaysia, and it really also acted as like this database of inspiring stories in which I could go back to personally whenever I was having a moment of doubt in tech. I started receiving responses from all around the world, from young girls and young people in general that were reading these women in tech stories and getting encouragement from it. But at some point, I started to hit a slump because as I was writing blog post after blog post, I was stuck into thinking, what good is inspiration if it doesn't lead into action? We can write about women in tech's achievements, we can talk about their stories, and people can respond saying that they're inspiring, they're uplifting. But how do we translate that motivation into concrete action? Think about the climate action movement. We can talk about sustainability and being eco-friendly and fighting against climate change, but unless we actually take concrete steps to living more sustainable lives and making more eco-friendly choices, that inspiration, that sense of awe that we feel when we see Greta, for example, speak doesn't actually lead to anything unless it's backed up by action. So in order to do that with VTech, in order to turn inspiration into action, we transitioned from a blog into a community organization that hosted the first Women in Tech conference for students and by students in the Philippines. This was really born out of seeing different women in tech communities in places like the United States and thinking, why don't we have something like this available in the Philippines, in Manila? And why do we have to wait for the adults to set up the conferences and events that we as youth wish to see, mirroring the diversity that we want to see in the tech industry? I also got really frustrated personally about seeing and going to different technology events, networking events, conferences, and back home in Manila and seeing that none of the speakers, judges, or mentors were women. And I thought that something has to change. So I recruited a bunch of people that I had seen at events and conferences that were also very passionate about gender equality and technology, and together we rebranded WeTech into a community org, and we started that Women in Tech conference in partnership with Accenture Philippines. It was really exciting, and it was such a heartwarming moment to see people come together to listen to women in tech speakers, keynote speakers, workshop heads, and just celebrate the tremendous accomplishments of women in tech, specifically Filipino women in tech. I say everybody was welcome to this conference, not just young women, because we really wanted to emulate a gender equal workplace. And that means a workplace that doesn't just exclude men from the conversation. It includes everybody from the conversation, because we know that in an ideal 50-50 tech workplace, men aren't just going to disappear from the conversation. They're going to need to be allies, they're going to need to be people that call out instances of microaggression or advocate for other young women in tech. So that was our logic really moving forward. After the WitCon, Women in Tech conference, my team and I looked at what we had accomplished, and we thought that a glaring reality among our participants was that they came from middle to upper class backgrounds, and that they could essentially do what I did and go home and look up tech tutorials and keep on pursuing technology from there. And in the Philippines, wherein so many people live under the poverty line, we realized that it isn't just a gender issue currently that's persisting in technology, but also an accessibility issue. And from there, we decided to host our first Women in Tech Teach program, in which we went to Marawi back in 2018 to bring secondhand laptops and tech modules and teach these tech modules to the students of Mindanao State University's High School Training Center. That program then became We Teach, in which we'd go to different low-income communities across the country and we'd teach students basic tech literacy, as well as introductory programming. I say basic tech literacy because a lot of these students had never used laptops, tablets before, and we wanted to make sure that they knew and were equipped with the necessary skills to be able to navigate this digital society that we are currently living with. Currently, WeTech is not just a gender-focused org, but also an org that hopes to build a world where all youth, regardless of their gender or socioeconomic status, use technology to make a difference in society. And we have this dream where every person around the world can have that access, not just in the Philippines, but around the world globally. We say that because we've currently grown into an organization with 20 plus chapters around the world in really exciting places like Malaysia, Vietnam, and Singapore. And it's just so amazing to look at our team of hundreds of young people advocating towards social change driven by technology. When I'm not working on WeTech, I'm a full-time student. And what keeps me going, despite the moments wherein I am juggling what feels like a million things at once, is my team. And just the pure and exciting energy that they radiate to help contribute to such a global cause. Because of the pandemic, we're seeing how intertwined technology is to education and how a lack of technology is basically synonymous now to a lack of an education. And currently, we're really seeing people adopt this mindset that tech should be a human right. Currently, it is a privilege that not everybody gets to have, but I hope that one day, with the work that we do at WeTech and the work that many other nonprofits around the world do to advocate for tech accessibility, tech can be so much more than a privilege and instead be a right for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Audrey Pe, for informing us about the gender discrimination in the tech industry. Your story gives us encouragement to work towards change.
And that is all we have for today. We truly hope this was an unforgettable and enlightening experience for you. We would like to give a huge thank you to everyone who made this event possible, including our speakers, performers, TEDx team, and of course, all of you as the audience.
To finish the day off, let us have a final word from our supervisor, Mr. Jonathan Denton.
Wow, what an event. I must say I feel a little bit awkward at being given the honor to close such a wonderful event. And no, it's not because I'm the oldest at a TEDx youth conference. It's because I don't want to take anything away from the fact that this is a 100% student organized, produced, promoted, and published event. Today, we have been spoilt with a series of inspiring and thought-provoking talks and presentations by a widely diverse group of highly talented and ambitious young people whose passion for life we hope helps reconnect and reignite your own hopes and dreams in this post-pandemic world. It all started just under a year ago with a simple question. Sir, can CIS have a TEDx conference? Well, you've certainly answered that question. From the moment that you asked the question, the TEDx group sprang into action. A TEDx application was submitted, and later a license was granted. After that, the TEDx group broke into different divisions. These included Zoom, logistics, content, and marketing. Funds were raised to cover expenses, as well as to provide thank you packages for presenters. Presenters and performance and other content was looked like and searched for, adhering to the tight TED regulations. Content was produced and packaged and marketed And lastly, like the Zooming team got together to check and to ensure that the bandwidth would hold out during the live presentations. There was just so much more also that was done that I can't even go into mentioning it now. One thing I will mention is not only was this event completely student run, 100% student run, it was also a self-sufficient project. Students didn't the team didn't require funds from anyone else. They created their own funds, they created their own event. So join me in saying thank you, Sally. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Anya. Thank you, Renoa. Thank you to all those others that helped make this most amazing event possible. Thank you to our performers, to our presenters, and thank you to you too for watching and being part of this wonderful event. Thank you, and keep dreaming.
What an incredibly inspiring 2 hours. We finally finished watching all of the talks carefully prepared by our speakers. However, this isn't the only thing we've prepared for this evening. I will be joined by Renoa K to welcome our speakers for the live Q&A. We have with us here today Butch Karungay, Zanaya Gray, John Nico Koyoka, Kate Anzani, Tara Santos, Jude Bacalso, and Nicole Ong O. Thank you, speakers, so much for taking the time to partake in the Q&A. If the speakers could kindly turn their cameras on and use their respective Zoom background, that will be highly appreciated.
Audience, please feel free to leave questions for the speakers in the chat box. It doesn't matter if you're joining us from Zoom or YouTube. We will be reading them all. If you're joining via Zoom, you may unmute your mic and ask a question out loud, but please continue to keep your cameras off during the Q&A. For the meantime, here are some general questions directed to all of the speakers. Speakers, you may raise your hand if you would like to answer. We'll go in order by who raised their hand. First to last. Are we ready? Okay, let's begin. First question from us. What was it like when preparing and creating your talk?
Mr. Butch Karungay, you may go.
Hey everyone, good evening. Thanks again for having me. Yeah, it's actually kind of, it was kind of not tough, but because I've been doing a lot of these things, but it's really more for an adult audience, and I wasn't quite sure how, like how old the audience was going to be, because IS does span like quite a wide range of grades and levels. So yeah, I really had to think about it a few times and really try to make it relatable while still be thought-provoking. So I thought it was kind of tough, but I hope that my talk was able to achieve that.
Would anyone like to go next?
CIS, thank you for having me.
Good evening, Cebu International School. Thank you for having me. For me, it was kind of challenging at first, but then as I got to know what I really wanted to say and what the message I wanted to get across, it became easier to know what I wanted to actually make my talk about, which writing the script at first was really hard because I needed to get every single detail. And since it needed to be really long, I had to extend it every single time. And thankfully, at the end, I made the talk.
Well, it was a lovely talk. Thank you so much. Would anyone want to share their ideas next?
I can go. For me, I think that the most difficult part was trying to find the message that wasn't already in different TED Talks about climate change, because there are a lot of public like talks available about climate change, and I guess the one thing I wanted to really focus on was like what I wish I knew as an activist going into it, because I feel like when you watch a lot of these things, they can be kind of scary and overwhelming. So I think that it was my goal for this was just to kind of have a blanket, or yeah, like a blanket of, or like an easy introduction to climate activism. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Santos. Is anyone interested in going next?
Hi everyone, good evening. Yes, so can you hear me? All right. I think for me as well, just like the rest of the speakers, it was a very challenging task as well. But however, I really look at this opportunity as a platform, not only for me to be able to share my personal story, but also the story of the programs and the people I've met. And so I think what also helped me really is that right now I'm teaching, and I am so used to with talking to my students, and I just really grabbed this opportunity as well to give a message to the youth, most especially to the students who also are really having a hard time right now thinking of what they really would want to pursue. And I think what really helped me is that most of my story is really personal, and so I just really spent time to do some self-reflection, went back to my core and really think of something that would really resonate not only to students but also really to young people. And so I think that really helped me.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate. Just want to say thank you. I see familiar faces. Hi, Jude. Hi, Butch. Jude and I had that conversation one time. We thought to ourselves, what was it that we went through? And we just needed to talk about it because I don't think we were alone. There was a lot of darkness in the pandemic, and I hope that what was spoken about was motivating and inspiring to move forward. I think that was really the gist that I received having to do this talk, and also the walk that we created during lockdown. But other than that, Jude, would you agree?
Absolutely, Kate. Absolutely. I was watching my language because Zenaya is here. So I was about to say something other than absolutely.
Thank you so much, Ms. Andani and Ms. Bacalso. So, Ms. Ong, would you like to go next and share your final thoughts?
Yeah, so I guess like all the other speakers, I also had quite the challenge on making my talk, because usually when I do other talks, it's more of like how was I able to start a business, not really more of how I manage my time. So I had to really sit down and think about how I got to manage my time during the pandemic, because it's totally different from when I had face-to-face classes. And aside from that, I'm also balancing my schoolwork because I am a senior in university right now. So yeah.
It's amazing looking at the diversity of all the speakers. I think the challenge for me basically was in the editing of what I wanted to say and putting focus into it, because when I was growing up and listening to a lot of talks also, if there was just one single point, because all of us, if you look at the diversity of the speakers and the diversity of what we dip our hands into, our fingers into, it is just so amazingly different from one person to the other, that how can you become relevant to at least one person who's listening to us? And that's what struck me when I was listening to a lot of these talks growing up as well. There was just one singular idea. If there was just one single idea that I could get from that talk, it was already a success. I would not remember the entire, 10, 15 minutes the speaker was in front of me. But if there was just one thought that inspired me and that would resonate with me for the rest of my life, that would have been a success also. So I hope that even just one thought from what I said and from what the other speaker said has inspired you, and that started a spark in you, then this was already a success.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bakal. So we do agree that we have quite the wide array of speakers here, and we are so grateful that most of you could join us here today for the Q&A. So once again, thank you. All of that was some really good advice for anyone dreaming of making a TED Talk one day. Hopefully, we can see one of our students do this as well in the future. Moving on to our second question. What advice would you give to students who are still trying to discover what they want to achieve?
Can I go first? So I think one advice I could give is, because I'm still at such a young age, I'm 22 years old, and I think the advice I can give is that don't be afraid to explore, because like being, especially if you're like at your teens, you still have so much time in the world. You feel like I don't know, because when I was a teen, I would feel like I had to rush into everything, like I had to figure out what I wanted to do right away and stuff like that. I felt like not that time was running off, because obviously I was still so young, but I felt like I wanted to be in the right path already and everything like that. But now that I'm around 20s, I realized that I should have explored more when I was a teen, and I shouldn't have been like afraid to try out all these new things to figure out what I really wanted. But I'm just lucky, like what I pursued when I was a teen, I'm still doing it until now, and I really like what I'm doing. So yeah.
I guess I'll go next. Yeah, as I mentioned in my talk, sure, I that's why I put up. I'm a very metrics oriented guy, so sure, metrics are important, but they're not the one all and be all. And then I completely agree with Nicole that you really should explore. So that's why I said Rome was not built in a day, and you can always explore. And then, but and not be afraid to make mistakes, but make sure that you course correct after making those mistakes. And lastly, you just really enjoy the journey. And it may not seem like it's enjoyable at that one particular juncture, but the holistic of it should be enjoying it and really relishing it, and making it build on top of each other, so you're able to really figure out where your niche is in this world.
Hi. My advice is to really try everything, but take your time while you do it. And you shouldn't do it maybe you should start doing it at a young age, because once you do it, you will have enough time to figure out what you want to do in the future. And once you figured it out, you can just keep on doing that thing and try, if you really want to, expand it more and go for your dreams.
I'm sorry, Zanaya, you are like a bottled up superwoman. I'm 42 now. So I guess you could say connecting the dots and enlarging your network and just being your authentic self moving forward. The pandemic has taught us that in our alone time, nothing moves. So we really all need each other, right? And if there's one thing that the pandemic really taught us, is to really openly communicate, because you dream big, but you don't know how to get there. And when you communicate that to the world, the universe kind of puts people in your path that are like the thinking tools or the think tank for the next steps. I mean, we all don't know what success means moving forward, but I think happiness is a big part of it. So you have to enjoy what you're doing. And then everything else is just the cherry on top, I guess. I think that was the gist of the reason why we all accepted this talk, to share our story so that one little light gets inspired, right? And there was a lot of people we know in this industry, or not just in this industry, in many industries, that gave up and like got depressed and committed suicide. So we're hoping that spark resonates and echoes. Really, that's what it is.
Okay, I would also like to answer the question. I think I have 2 points that I would want to give a message note to the young people. Number one is do it afraid. And I think this is something not only me, but the rest of the speakers have also been telling a while ago. Do it afraid. I think it's really okay to do things that you are afraid. Just like maybe some of us here, when we accepted this challenge to give a talk at some point, if we really have our own challenges, but we said yes because we believe on a bigger cause. And I think what really made all of these successful, even the organizers, is that we just do things afraid. And the number two is dream big, start small, and scale up. I think this is something that I really lived. And listening also to my co-speakers, I think this also really resonated to all of us, that really big things are possible only if we dream those big things. However, we start small. And I think it's really a call for everyone, especially for dreamers, for the young people, that when we dream, we always start small, but every day we also challenge ourselves to make those dreams bigger. And I think one thing that I would also like to add is that when we dream, it's also my hope that when we dream for ourselves, we always bring with us our dreams and aspirations for our community and for our country. Because again, kahit ang hirap man mahalin ng Pilipinas, dapat hindi natin ito sinusukuan. And I think that means so much, especially at this very moment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kayoka. So would any of the speakers like to go next?
I think for me, the biggest, or like the thing you should ask yourself is, what sparks the most passion and what brings me the most joy. I think that once you kind of figure out that answer and keep asking yourself that, your path or what you're meant to do in this world gets a lot easier. And while you're doing that, I think that not comparing yourself to anyone, I think that's really easy to do, especially that we're young, we're on like Facebook, Instagram, social media a lot. And it's really easy to think that everyone has their stuff together just by looking at the stuff they post online. I think I have the tendency to do that too. So I think it's a process of learning and unlearning. So yeah, just keep asking yourself that question of what brings me the most joy and what sparks the most passion.
Thank you, Ms. Santos. Would anyone like to add on to that or have their own answer?
Me, maybe two things. Number one, you don't believe it when people tell you you cannot be this and that at the same time. At every juncture that I've traveled, I've always been told you cannot be this, you cannot be that. And I just went on, I just plodded on anyway. I do both the sciences and arts, and I make sure that whatever field I'm in, there's a line that I've always loved, and I was trying to live up to: be so good that they cannot ignore you. So whatever field it is you find yourself in, whether it is two fields that people don't think can ever converge. I'm in the deep sciences as a geneticist, but I'm also a writer, a photographer, so mostly in arts as well.
be so good that they cannot ignore you. Second one would be, because I'm also a writer, I love the silent power of a byline. A byline is when you write something and you say by Jude Bacal. So people rarely look at the byline. But if the story that you tell resonates, that's your silent power. And that's more palpable than overt power, which through the years I have enjoyed to the hilt. So soft power, silent power is even better than overt power.
Thank you so much for those two important points, Ms. Bacalso. Mr. Karungay, would you like to go next?
I think I already answered this question earlier.
I'm sorry.
Everyone pretty much covered it already, guys. But
Yeah.
so don't forget your ikigai, your passion, your mission, your, what is that again? God, I can't remember. Your passion, your mission, your profession, and your vocation.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm sure our student community will find those responses very, very helpful. Okay, last question from us. How do you plan to continue to reigniting your life after this event? Once again, all speakers may answer.
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
How do you plan to continue reigniting your life after this event?
Hi again. I know I said hi so many times already, but I plan to reignite, to continue to ignite my passion. I am making the second book come out soon for my series, and I'm planning to join, maybe even making other series in the, maybe not even just about this magic and spell series, but maybe other kinds of series like realistic kind of fiction series. I also, my friends really have been helping me with, they inspired me to write this book. They were the story that helped me to write this book. And I know my friends at school will always be there for me, and my friends at home will always be there for me, and my parents will always be for me, and my family will always be for me. And I always will plan to keep on using that special writing activity that I was able to do really good, and that I love to do. And so it will never go away, but I could always say, I was a writer. And saying those words are really powerful, because they say lots and lots of things. And that's what I'm all about. I'm sorry, I just woke up at 7 a.m. in the morning here, so my eyes are kind of puffy.
Well, good morning to you, Zanaya. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Would anyone else like to join?
I'm going to go next. Okay. I think moving forward, you always need a think tank, because when you go with a thought process or a thread, you need to lobby against a mirror. And sometimes that mirror reflection is something you may not like. And that think tank becomes your sharpening sword. With that think tank, to continue the sustainability acts that we've been doing, and the food tourism mount, we are mounting the second year of the Food and Wine Festival in June. So those that are inclined in culinary, hospitality, this year we're a little bit ambitious to make it bigger, and the DOT wants CNN Philippines, and he just wants a bigger mount. So I'm a little overwhelmed moving forward, because mind you, everything that happened in the pandemic was a recovery project. And so this recovery project is here to stay. So I'm always reminded to sharpen skills and keep excellence high. and everything else, if it's meant for you, stays, right? So like the pandemic, everything was a filter. Everything that you've done fizzled out or stayed, and the ones that stayed are the ones you're meant to pursue. It's like a process of elimination. So that's sort of my 2 cents, how to keep the, and I'm literally behind a fire, so you need to always feed the fire, keep the fire burning. That's really what it is. Sounds cheesy, but it's true. I see Butch a lot too, and he, we constantly are each other's rub. And now, Jude, I know you're a writer, and we're also coming out with a magazine publication called Eat Cebu. And I would love to have Jude on the writing team because Butch is on the writing team. So it's a digital magazine and a food magazine directed to tourism and food tourism for Cebu. So you just keep those avenues strong. So Jude, I would love for you to write in the magazine.
Let's talk. Kate actually started out by telling you her age. Well, Butch and I are forever 27. That's not.
No, I'm not 25.
25.
Not 25. That's the hashtag, not 25.
25th birthday every single year. That's what he does. And what I do is, and Zanaya, please don't follow your elders, but I lie about my age all the time. There will come a time when you will be lying about your age. Remember that the best way to find out if someone's lying about their age is when you ask them their year of birth, just like that, because they cannot be that quick in calculating. So every year I recalculate my age. So I'm forever 27 or 28, thereabouts. I was looking at the theme of your TED Talk, and it's perfect, because this is what is exactly is happening now that we're crawling out of 25 months of the lockdown. You rediscover yourself, you adapt yourself to what is new, and you never knew that these were things that you could do. I have this whole setup because I shifted to hosting online, doing stuff over Zoom. So I want to have an amazing setup. So I put up this whole home studio by myself from Googling things. And at my age, my real age, which you will never know, I never thought that I would be able to do that and set it up myself. So I rediscovered that about myself. Everyone should do that as well. Reconnect. Just like Kate said, you have to reconnect with the group of people that always inspire you, because you learn from them. And it's a good thing to always have that strong support mechanism, especially when we're still coming out of a pandemic. The pandemic is still there. And the third thing I think is most important is, how do you reignite coming out of this? And right after this talk, I think it's constant learning. It doesn't matter if you're 9 years old or 40 something nearing 50, 40 something nearing 50. You have to constantly learn, because once you're jaded, you're dead.
Yeah.
That's when you die.
Yeah, it's a constant quest for new knowledge, new learning, and the curiosity that never goes away. And I think I talked about that in my talk, and really surrounding yourself with like individuals. But one thing that I think people also touched on is that the pandemic actually wasn't that bad in retrospect when I think about it, because before the pandemic, I think all of us were too distracted. We were running at like breakneck speeds and thinking that it was going to be sustainable when it wasn't. A lot of things we were doing were not sustainable. We were just spreading ourselves too thin. And the pandemic really forced us to slow down, reflect as to what those paths that we were at prior to the pandemic, and reevaluate those paths. And now I think a lot of us, I was already kind of going that direction prior, but the pandemic really magnified, I think, where I was and where I wanted to be. And by pivoting, reassessing, and refining your paths going forward, and really really making sure that these are where my passions really lie. This is really where my mission is. This is where my vocation should be. This is where my mission is. Then it's made me realize that, okay, sure, it did validate some of the things pre-pandemic, but then it made my path going forward clearer. And one thing that I think Kate and Jude hasn't mentioned yet is that while it is great to have a long-term goals, like bigger goals long-term, it's also very important to pick your low-hanging fruits and have your quick wins in the short term. So it validates what you're doing in a more regular basis. So you don't have to have all these like coups all the time. So even finding the beauty in everyday things and finding happiness in things that, you know, are ordinary, I think and that's what Ikigai is really about, like having a reason to wake up to. And
but don't we love our low-hanging fruit?
Yeah. Hello, Jude. Okay, audience. Okay. Okay, so that's my 2 cents. I'm gonna shut up now.
Say goodbye.
I think I would follow because Sir Butch has mentioned about Ikigai, and I think it's something that I was also able to mention in my talk about Ikigai. And me representing education champions, I would like to believe that right now the role of a teacher, of an educator, is becoming even more relevant, especially during the pandemic. And so I consider really my profession as a way of life, meaning for me, what matters is really how you do wherever you go. And that's how I look at my profession at the moment as a teacher. And planning on how to reignite, knowing also my Ikigai and something that I'm passionate really about in terms of quality education. Something that I've been working at the moment is really being able to provide platforms and opportunities for Filipino students, especially those in public schools. One thing that we are facing right now is in terms of our mathematics and science education, and then in senior high school, especially in research. So we are also, my team is also busy at the moment, also organizing a senior high school research summit, wherein we provide opportunities for students, especially those in public schools, for them to be able to really share their research undertakings, innovations, and listen also to the stories of passion sharers, especially those who have really innovations, listening to Nicole, Tara, and for the rest of the speakers. That really inspired me as well to really push through with this research summit, because in the public schools, there's really a problem, and we really need to extend our help and provide them with more opportunities for them to be able really to become the best versions of themselves. And so that's why right now, even if I'm teaching in private school, most of our programs and activities in the department, we really would try our best to really engage those students in public schools, teachers in the public schools. Because again, as when you champion and when you advocate for quality education, I'm teaching in a private school, but the context of the problems in the public schools are way different than those in the private schools. And that's why I think that's something that I'm passionate about. And I'm very happy. And I think this network that I got, the new people I've also met in this TEDx, is also very helpful for me to be able to further that cause. I may be able to invite some of our speakers here, especially those in technology, to be able to share for our student researchers to also really become more motivated, not only to do research, but to eventually realize their innovations, even if they are still that young. Because if these students made it possible, I believe that my students can also make it really possible.
Thank you so much. Yes, Miss Nicole.
I agree with the other speakers with what they said. And I think one thing I learned, I mentioned earlier in my talk, one thing I learned during the pandemic is like to slow down, like what Butch said. And then because of a pandemic, I was really able to kind of recalibrate myself and figure out what's really important to me in my life and what I really prioritize. And moving on now that, you know, things are slowly getting back, or like not really getting back to normal, but the new normal is coming in and things are kind of like easier now for people because of the low cases. I want to always remind myself like what I prioritize. Unlike before the pandemic, I was also really trying to get most done. Not really for me before, it was more of like quantity over quality, and the pandemic made me realize that quality is very important, especially in my work. So that's something I want to keep in mind moving into the future.
For me, I think the main thing is just continuing to start or continuing to start like important yet important conversations, even if they might be difficult, especially when you're talking about the climate crisis. A lot of people might not understand how it'll affect them if you're talking to someone, let's say, out of the Philippines. And I tend to like deal with a lot of like white international activists who see the climate crisis in a very different way than, let's say, people from the Philippines would see it. And connecting that with, connecting with important or vulnerable communities that continue to be affected by the climate crisis is another really important thing that I want to focus on. Now that we can continue to do like on-ground work, we can actually visit and help these communities, ask them what they want, and provide solutions that aren't just like band-aids, and actually, work with these communities who need the most help.
Thank you all so much for your insightful responses. They were very motivating, and we're so honored to have you all respond to the Q&A questions we have prepared today. If the audience has any more to add, please put it in the chat. You may also put it in the YouTube chat box. We have one from Zenaya, from Bea. It says, "Hi Zenaya, my 9-year-old sister just finished reading your book, is wondering when your next book is coming out. She absolutely loves your work. What is next for Petunia?" Zenaya, we are aware that you sort of answered this earlier, but if you would like to add on, please go ahead.
Well, hi again. Yeah, I'm gonna continue this series. Probably, it's not gonna be a big series. After all, this is my first series, but I'm probably gonna expand another series more. But right now, this is probably gonna go up to maybe 4 or 3 books. And right now, I'm still working on the second one, but definitely it is coming out soon. So be ready for it.
Thank you, Zenaya. We are all very, very, very excited for your next books. We have another question from Rhett. He asks, do you guys have scripts? How do you all communicate so well? What tips do you have for speaking?
Once again, any of the speakers may answer.
I had a script when I did the presentation because I was like so swamped that I'd rather read than ramble on, and there's quite limited time frame. But I think the most important thing is really to just prepare, just to prepare in advance, know your material, do outlines, and just to make sure you don't forget the salient points. And prepare.
That question is like asking someone, are you wearing makeup? And of course, my answer would be no, I was born with it. So, right, Butch?
Well, Jude, I have blackmail pictures of you.
From way back when. Well, I'm not wearing makeup, but I have naturally dark eyes with a kohl. Yes, we have scripts, and it's amazing how available technology can be now. So I actually bought this amazing teleprompter that is so tiny that I'm looking straight into the camera into my script, making people think that I'm not reading anything. But the thing is, I wrote it myself. And my advice really to improve communication is to read. A lot of people have forgotten to read. And I was a teacher for many years. And I was very disappointed whenever I would read an essay answer. Not a lot of teachers would give essay questions anymore because it is such a headache to read. I'm pretty sure that John will agree. It's a headache to read essay answers now because people can speak good English when it's spoken in front because people listen to the radio or watch TV. But written English is horrible in this generation. So that's because people have forgotten to read. And the structure of English, the choice of words is different when you're reading it from when you're listening to it. So I hope this generation goes back to reading and not just waiting for the movie to come out.
There is another question in the chat. If no one has anything else to add on, we will continue with this question. Bea asks, for Miss Jude Bacalso, how do you manage to be so articulate, and what are your tips for writing in a way that truly resonates with people?
Ooh, the first part is Sesame Street. I have to admit, I learned my English, and Butch is laughing because when we were growing up, our English came from Sesame Street. And well, Volta's 5 after that. you can tell how old I am from the examples that I'm coming out with, but yes, Sesame Street. It's also reading, like I said earlier, the structure of English is really different when you read it from when you listen to it. You think that you can speak good English, and then when they ask you to put it down on paper, it's horrible. And I've been an editor for many years. So that's one of the most disappointing facts. How do you write that resonates with people? It is different for every situation. When I write, there are situations where it is most interesting when I put myself into the article, but there are most situations also for more of the articles that I write that I detach myself from it and just speak from a perspective that can be understood by everyone. One of the most difficult things that I had to do and to write and actually work on it was a story just very recently, a couple of months ago. I did a story for the New York Times on the, I was producer for that story for Hannah Reyes Morales. So it was on the whale sharks. And I never wanted to write about the whale sharks because as a biologist, I'm completely against that practice. But when I was there and I met the people who were involved in it, it opens your eyes. So travel is also it's an important teacher for all of us. But I think that story resonated because it was so very well balanced. We wanted to involve both sides of the story, two sides of the coin, and one could not lean one way or the other. Otherwise, you would be putting out only one side of the story, even if you ask the other side, the same question. So for a story to resonate, and I've been very lucky that most of the stories that I've worked on have resonated to an international audience. I never would have thought that it would become a Netflix special when I wrote about a dish made from an eel. It's a combination of luck and maybe creating a network for yourself that gives you the way that people can listen to you more than the others. So to resonate, you bring yourself back to the stories of your youth and put yourself into it, and the whole point of view should be informed by as well whatever it is that you've gone through personally. So for the authors, or for those of you who want to be writers in the future, put your personality into your stories, but know when to take it out.
Thank
Did
you
that,
so
did that
much.
make sense?
Yes, it made sense. Sorry, I need to cut out, guys, because I'm half an hour late for dinner. So thank you again for having me, and good job, everyone. Congratulations, it was a fantastic event.
Hey, also us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Me too.
Cocktail hour.
Everyone. We hope everyone enjoyed their time with us and found this a memorable experience. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you.